Governor Steve Sisolak, thank you so much for joining us. Let's start with President Donald Trump. He called you a political hack, told his supporters to tell your governor to open up your state. Your response?
Well, I think that, I don't know where he comes up with the political hack. I thought he was talking about his golf game or something. I don't know. I don't know how I can respond to President Trump and what he said. His actions were selfish, reckless, irresponsible. He jeopardized the health and safety of every person that lives in the state of Nevada. And there's just no excuse for what he did. I mean, he knew what the rules were. Those rules were developed in coordination with the White House. I mean, the limited gathering space. If you were red zone, it had to be 10, yellow, you could go to 25. We made it 50. He knew what the rules were and chose willfully to just disregard them. And then his comment that he wasn't worried about, getting a virus. Well, I'm not worried about him getting a virus. I'm worried about the 3 million people that live here getting the virus. And I just think it was very, very selfish of him to do what he did.
What about the criticism that the protests that have happened, the protests that have been happening, don't get as much criticism?
Okay, well, the protests get plenty of criticism. The difference is that you have a business. Let's take, for example, a gathering. Businesses we can regulate because they're licensed. You go in, like a casino could not have what they did at that manufacturing facility because they have a gaming license and they know what the rules are. But you can't control. The casinos are having a real problem. If you're inside the casino, you're going to follow the guidelines. You walk out on the strip after you leave one casino walking to another one, or you walk on Fremont Street. There's really nobody in charge of you when you're out there. We don't have law enforcement handing out tickets. There's not a group of people that are giving violations or ambassadors that are saying, you got to put your mask on, you got to socially distance. We don't have any of that. We count on people being responsible. And unfortunately, in this case, they simply were not irresponsible. Were not responsible. They were irresponsible.
The president is saying you were behind this effort to make sure his rallies and campaign events did not happen. You said you were not part of that. The next question is, no one from your office, no one from your administration made any phone calls?
No one made any phone calls with these rallies. I read about them in the paper and online, just like everybody else did. People have to understand, Vanessa, every county is different. Whether you're Washoe or Clark, or there are two big ones, or urban counties or rural counties, you can get out into White Pine, Esmeralda, and so forth, Elko. The requirements in those counties are different than they are in the big counties. So we allocated responsibility and flexibility to those counties that come up with rules and to enforce their rules, given the circumstances that we have. Now, some came from the federal government to the state, and the state gave them to the local authorities and whatnot, but they make those calls. Now, I don't know who the Trump campaign or whoever it might be called at the airport, both in Tahoe, both in Reno and in Las Vegas. And thank goodness those businesses were responsible enough to tell them no. It would be going against the governor's directive if we did host a rally like that. So I don't know where these locations that he's talking about even are and what he said. I have no clue.
So there's already concern about Labor Day weekend possibly causing a spike with COVID-19. We don't know yet because of the numbers. Now with this rally, particularly the one held indoors in Henderson, you saw the video. How nervous are you about our numbers going up?
Oh, it's not a question. It's inevitable. Our numbers are going to go up. I mean, it's not a question if they're going to go up from Labor Day. They haven't gone up thus far because we're only a week out. We'll be another week out and our numbers will go up. There is no doubt in my mind that 2 weeks from now, you're going to see a surge in cases as a result of these two rallies, one that was held up in Minden and the one that was held in Henderson. The one in Henderson, it couldn't have been worse. It's a confined area. There's not a lot of circulation of air. A lot of people were not wearing masks. And I'm sure some of the people behind the camera put them on when they were taking shots. But you looked at the audience, all the views I saw, people were not basically mostly wearing masks. They weren't distanced. They were in large groups. and there a lot of particulates are coming out. They're hollering, they're chanting, they're cheering, that sort of thing, which helps spread the virus. That's what spreads it. Uh, but what happens is, Vanessa, what people got to understand, we have just started to plateau and to go down in some of our hospitalization, our positivity, and whatnot. We're desperately trying to reopen our economy, to reopen more and more businesses, to expand their ability to bring people back to work and to make a living. And what he did by having these rallies hinders our ability to increase capacity in restaurants, in churches, in various businesses, because somebody is selfish enough to come in for their own good. Now everybody's going to suffer as a result of that, and our economy is not going to open back up as quickly as it would have. That's just not right.
Should the city of Henderson done more to prevent that and to make sure that did not happen?
Well, I can't criticize the city of Henderson. I mean, they sent him a letter ahead of time and said, don't do it. And then I can't imagine how President Trump says he doesn't know what applied to him. I mean, they sent a letter to the organization and said, you can't do this. What can the city of Henderson do? They find the organization, the landlord, the person who offered the building, Mr. Ahern, who had the first one that was on Sahara where he broke the rules. They find them for all the violations that happened. Now the state still has enforcement authority through some of our regulatory bodies that are looking at all these instances, but Henderson did what they could. I mean, this isn't a matter of playing gotcha. This is a matter, and it's not a matter of trying to get revenue. This is a matter of trying to get our economy back on track, to get people back to work, to get people in businesses opened up so that our economy can get going again. And the selfish, reckless actions of this individual, of the president, are going to set that all back. And that's very, very unfortunate. People have sacrificed a lot, Vanessa, to get us here. They've gone without visiting their parents in hospitals and without, being able to see with funerals and with weddings and, and now that all the sacrifices they made can be undone by these reckless actions.
The president is saying you're trying to steal the election coming up in November. What's your response to that and this misinformation about the election?
Well, that's typical that, it's just got to always be about somebody else, it's trying to do something. We have an election that is going to be conducted in a fair, a safe, and an accessible manner so that people don't have to decide between casting their vote and contracting COVID. During the primary, we had sites that people had to wait hours. I don't want that to happen. I don't want long lines. I am confident that the Secretary of State and the various registrars are capable of running an election. Then as the post office can't deliver ballots. I mean, the post office will get the ballots into everybody's hand. They'll get them out there. Nobody is looking to steal an election, but we are looking to make an election that everybody can participate in.
I just have two more questions. The request by Nevada for funding for the National Guard to keep them here with the COVID-19 response was turned down. What's your response to that?
Well, some of the states were given 100%. We were not given it. I asked repeatedly, probably half a dozen times. For a state like us, that's a lot of money. It's $7 or $8 million. Now, that money's going to have to come from somewhere else because the Guard has been indispensable. We can't do it without the Guard. I mean, they're at all of our testing sites. They're helping us behind the scenes with a lot of things. But the president, I guess if he's likes you and you're his friend, he follows the rules in your town and doesn't break them and gives you the money. And if he doesn't, you don't get it. So unfortunately, the state is suffering as a result of his decision to not treat Nevada fairly.
Okay, and last question. Just for Nevadans who are frustrated by what's happening with our economy here with COVID-19, the first one, about unemployment. There's a lot of frustration there. The second is some Nevadans see these restrictions. For example, you could get your nails done, but there were still some restrictions on bars. What would you say to Nevadans who are frustrated?
I understand people have frustrations. These were not just businesses that were picked here and there. This was done after extensive study and work with the Center for Disease Control and FEMA that came forward with these recommendations, with what the White House said, that the initial response was that the biggest spreading area was bars because people congregate there. You go to a bar to socialize, to meet people, to have a good time. You don't go to a bar to sit by yourself and have a hamburger and a beer and go back home. You go to a restaurant usually for that. It was deemed that restaurants could be okay if we put people outside at reduced capacity. We are following science and the best guidelines in order to decide what businesses to open up. Nail salons and hair salons and eyelashes and all that stuff, we finally got them opened up under some restrictions, and I think things are better. We got some people back to work. DETR has been a challenge. You've got to understand that our DETR system that's been in place has been underfunded for decades. This is what I inherited. It has never had to deal with this many people. I mean, we are just overwhelmed with claims and with situations. And then when you add on to that, the fact that when the federal government says to you, okay, you distribute the money and the extra $600, but if somebody fraudulently gets the money, the state of Nevada has to pay the federal government back. Well, now it's my responsibility to the state and the taxpayer. We don't have the money to pay back, to make sure that we're not paying people unfairly and fraudulent claims. Now, Nevada is unique. Not a lot of states don't have income tax. We don't have an income tax here. The states that have an income tax have a database. They use that database to cross-reference with their claims so they could tell if somebody was really a resident in that state. And they knew whether or not it was a fraudulent or legitimate claim. We don't have that. So we have to check those one at a time to make sure that somebody was a legitimate claimant. We're working our way through that. It's been a difficult, complicated process, but I'm confident that in the foreseeable future, you'll see more and more of these claims adjudicated and we'll work our way out of it. But the citizens have done, residents have done a remarkable job. I mean, the vast majority you're seeing, if you go to a restaurant or a grocery store, whatever it might be, they're wearing their masks. They really are practicing social distancing. And I know some people want to make it into a political statement, but it's not a political statement. Masks are not partisan. Masks are, it's a medical thing to get through. We are constantly looking to improve the situation, to address people's frustrations that we have. We're going to have some announcements in the next couple of weeks upcoming as it relates to that and some of the restrictions and whatnot that we have in place. And hopefully people will be more, relaxed and understanding of the situation. But 6 months ago, this started. I mean, we finished up a school year with kids on distance education. We're back to distance education. It's been a tough time for everybody. It's been a really tough time. It's been a tough time for me. It's been a tough time for my family, for my administration. But all the work that was put forward to try to get us there, to have one individual who decided to be so arrogant and reckless that he's going to risk everybody's well-being is just something that I'm not happy about. And I made those feelings clear, but I will continue to fight for all the residents of Nevada.